Following interventions announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa for those hit by COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown, questions of administration by political parties came into question. Some of the areas involved included social grants, food parcels for those in need and relief funds for small business owners. Recently, allegations circulated about councillors associated with food parcel fraud. How will these implications affect upcoming local government elections? Those are the questions we're asking. And joining us on the line to talk about the possible impact of these allegations may have on political parties is Associate Professor for Public Administration at Northwest University, Professor Barry Hanyane. Professor, thanks once again for joining us on Weekend Dawn. Now, we've seen allegations of food parcel fraud brought against party officials and members, specifically of the ruling party. What do we make of this, and was this expected?
Jacob, good morning, and good morning to your wonderful viewers. Look, I think if memory serves me well, we need to go back to pre-democracy period, when some of our very own ANC activists would receive parcels from international donors, and sadly, some of these parcels would not make way to intended beneficiaries. So in short, my analysis is that the anatomy of this action is embedded deeply in our consciousness, dating as far back as the pre-democracy era, where some of these donations would simply disappear because people saw in that a sense of empowering themselves materially and otherwise. So here we are, 2020 fast track. We still see this happening. I'm afraid the whole notion and intention, as noble as it sounds, that we should have your common states, such as your food bank, might not necessarily curb this scourge because of some of the reasons that I've alluded to, but also because of the gaps that exist in the system itself. And it's going to be difficult. However, we have now the power of technology. We've seen some of these videos circulating in social media. The most notable one in Mpumalanga, where the deputy speaker there was alleged to have deposited some of these parcels in one of his homes. And in a sense, one would wonder, what is our law enforcement doing about that? Has this been reported as well? So in this instance, my solution that I would propose would be perhaps to go back to 2010 during the World Cup, when we had your spot on some kind of law enforcement mechanisms immediately, where side courts will be put in place to prosecute those whose hands and fingers is found in the cookie jar.
Now, Barry, how will these allegations that have surfaced affect the people who vote in the upcoming local government elections?
That's a complicated question. South African voters have a way of demonstrating allegiance. We are not a voter ecosystem, if you want to call it that way, that pretty much brings policy issues, governance issues closer to heart. And this happens, though, I must admit, especially in your middle class social circles. But when it comes to ordinary folks, what appeals to them, it seems, given the experience and the observation, at least in the last 25 years, is the pomp and your ceremonial appeal, be it through PR or be it some kind of excitement that we have seen, that actually gets people excited and making certain choices. And it's going to take time for us to change the system. It's a social thing as much as it's a political thing. So I don't see this having a direct impact as such when it comes to voter choices because of the reasons that I've just given now. But also, we are somewhat of a young democracy that's still finding its feet. that wants to deal with rational issues as and when it happens. So the issue of maturity of our voters might be challenged in this instance.
Now, how do these allegations further affect public confidence in the administration of the monetary relief funds, which have been provided for various groups such as small business owners? Will these not get looted as well?
It might happen to a certain degree, but I'm sort of comfortable and the confidence that I have in our systems. Remember, we have the Office of the Auditor General, especially from our municipalities. Whatever allocation is made, some measure of accountability, and one would argue transparency as well, would have to find expression in the way in which these public transactions are handled. And in the end, allowing systems as well as demanding accountability from that office. It's a normal practice. It does not, however, provide a cushion for such actions, for mishandling of public funds not to happen. This is what we call a priori action that comes after transactions have happened. Unfortunately, some of the bad transactions may be discovered very late, having created some kind of damage in terms of lack of empowering, especially those who are in need of some of these social relief programs as well as products.
Professor, it seems as though food parcels are the new currency when it comes to helping people out who are obviously dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. My question is, was there a different method that could have been used to get people fed, i.e. food vouchers, or obviously increasing the SASSA grants a little more than what's been announced?
Look, that is what was proposed initially when the president announced your 500 billion rand allocation as part of your COVID-19 economy and, most importantly, response from government. That in some instances, vouchers will be made available. That system in itself may very well be fraught in some instances with corruption tendencies. You will find, for instance, poor quality of products that are packaged together as part of these parcels that are being handled out. We've seen already similar instances where people cried foul to say some of these products are expired, some of these products are not fit for human consumption. So in the end, sadly, corruption will manifest in various ways at the end, benefiting perhaps your politicians who have first-hand exposure to this kind of power, and as you said, manipulating the whole currency system of the parcel systems.
And you mentioned obviously there that there are allegations of corruption. How do we know that the ANC will take action and the people who are found guilty of allegedly looting food parcels will be serving time in jail, for instance?
Well, it's up to communities themselves to rise up to this occasion. This cannot be left to politicians. I have strongly advocated for this position. Let it be that NGOs, yourselves as media, and of course our ordinary folks who have credible substance evidence to come forth and be bold enough to say, not under my watch will I allow public resources to be misused and misplaced in wrong hands, and to allow few individuals to benefit out of certain scrupulous programs, if not provisioning of some of these parcels.
From my perspective, I would think that it would be a lot easier to have collaborations with NGOs and not only call the media when you're handing out food packs, because it seems as though they are trying to buy political points.
No, true. But then at the same time, we should demand some kind of transparency. Look, in terms of Gauteng, we are told this whole notion of a food bank may very well work well, and some persuasion from donors who come from the private sector should then instill that kind of modality of cooperative governance. But in the end, one would then demand some kind of assurance, especially to our donors, cue from the current EFF position that as they have contributed to the Solidarity Fund, let it be published that this has been done and all other donors should follow suit. Perhaps we should take cue from that and insist that those who follow a similar pattern of engagement should also be transparent and make sure that whatever they give in the name of the public is actually intended to be received by our beneficiaries.
Professor, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Dawn. Really appreciate it. That was political analyst and associate professor for public administration at the Northwest University, talking about the impact of the allegations made against councillors and members of political parties, especially for the upcoming elections in sight. Thank you once more.